Hello, I'm Eve Jackson in Paris. Coming up on today's show. Old meets new at Paris Fashion Week as 80s glamour hits the catwalks. Diana's life in fashion. 20 years after her death, we're inside the princess's style exhibition at Kensington Palace. Putting Danish cinema on the map. Oscar-nominated Land of Mine is a harrowing look at life after war. Thanks for joining us. After London, New York and Milan, the last leg of Fashion Month takes place here in Paris. Over 8 days, we see shows from fashion's heavy hitters, on-the-rise talents and status quo challengers. Anthony Vaccarello's second collection for Saint Laurent was one to watch. On the runway, all was glam and glitter, with his fiercely feminine clothes with souped-up shoulders and slinky satin cocktail dresses. To a style icon now. An exhibition celebrating Princess Diana's fashion legacy has opened its doors in London. It's 20 years since she died in a car accident in Paris. A unique lineup of dresses charts her journey from a teenager to an international star at her former home in Kensington Palace. Shelley Sitbon reports.
Kensington Palace was Diana's home for about 15 years. This is where she selected the clothes that turned her into a fashion icon. 25 of those outfits, now back in Kensington, tell the story of her life and character. The exhibit shows how the princess' style evolved from when she entered the royal family and the limelight to her later years, when she was much more confident.
So we wanted to start with dresses that were from her very early romantic stage, where she wore more demure dresses, where she was known as Shy Di, where she wore frills and pastel colours, and then through the 80s, where she was Dynasty Di, and then to the glamorous dresses that we see her wearing at the end of her life.
Many of the haute couture pieces point to specific moments in history. Like this blue velvet dress Diana wore during her 1985 visit to the White House. Greeted by President Ronald Reagan, she later rocked the dance floor with John Travolta. With more media coverage than almost anyone else in the world, Diana decided to use her fame to bring attention to humanitarian causes.
She was a very proud ambassadress for British fashion as Princess of Wales, but she also used clothes to help her do her job as a humanitarian and as a patron of the arts, and to focus the press attention on her charity work.
Diana adapted her outfits to her causes, wearing colorful dresses when meeting with sick children. She often broke protocol rules, dropping the hat and gloves so she could hold and touch people without barriers. 20 years after her death, Diana's magic hasn't worn off. Her style still inspires celebrities and designers.
And the show Diana, Her Fashion Story goes on until the end of February next year at Kensington Palace. We're now to a show that's been playing in London for more than 30 years, making it the world's longest-running musical. Les Misérables is an international phenomenon, having travelled more than 40 countries in 22 languages. It's been seen by 70 million people. Its roots, of course, are French. It's based on Victor Hugo's book from 1862. And this week, the show has made its way back to France. It's on at Paris's Palais de Congrès before it heads off on tour around the country. Here's a taster. We're now to a neglected piece of post-war history. Denmark's Oscar-nominated Land of Mine looks at the immediate aftermath of conflict and occupation from World War II. It details the often ruthless practice of using German prisoners to defuse landmines. Haxi Meyers-Belkin reports.
In 1945, as the Second World War was drawing to a close, young German soldiers were handed over to the Danish army as prisoners of war. Most of these prisoners were forced into difficult and dangerous work. Chief among their tasks, clearing the 2 million mines the Nazis had left behind on Denmark's beaches. The mines were part of the Nazis' preparations for a possible Allied offensive on the western coast of the country. Clearing them was a suicide mission.
There isn't a lot of books written about this, so actually I went around on cemeteries, hospitals, and to not historians, but semi-experts who was interested in the history.
Souvenir de l'occupation. Il y avait voici un an 100 millions de mines enfouies dans le sol français. Depuis un an, on démine. Trop souvent selon la méthode la plus primitive, en explorant le sol à l'aide d'une tige de fer.
Il y a eu 3000 démineurs.
3,000 French people were recruited to clear the mines, and they were joined by around 40,000 German prisoners. 500 French people and 1,800 Germans lost their lives doing the work.
Land of Mine confronts a period in Danish and European history that many would rather forget. The young men recruited by Hitler in the dying days of the Nazi war effort, effectively sent to their deaths under Danish orders.
And Land of Mine hits French cinemas this week. Now, when most people think of a French cartoon character, they probably think of Asterix or Tintin. But there's another goofier comic hero who's a cultural phenomenon in the French-speaking world. Alexander Hurst introduces Gaston.
After 60 years of zany antics, Gaston le Gaffe, or Gaston the Goof, is still going strong. More than 100,000 have flocked to an exhibit at Paris's Pompidou Center to celebrate the famous French comic strip.
What do you like about Gaston?
His bumbling, goofy side.
He often invents things that go really wrong.
His head in the clouds dreams. That remind me a bit of the 60s protest movements, and also to get away from the seriousness of today.
Appearing first in the cartoon magazine Spirou in 1957, Gaston quickly shed his suit and bow tie and became an unemployed hero who bumbled from one thing to the next. To his creator, André Franquin, Gaston was often the epitome of the lazy goofball.
Gaston does an enormous amount of handiwork rather than office work, and I think that ultimately Gaston really is a good worker, only he doesn't always do the job that we expect him to do.
One such unexpected job was to question the idea of hierarchy and discipline, defying his bosses, the bourgeoisie, and the police, as student movements across France culminated in the revolutionary spring and summer of 1968, placing him as a historical and cultural phenomenon as well as commercial success. Libon is a cartoonist. For him, drawing Gaston le Gaffe is a way to pay homage to the character.
Along with Gottlieb and Asterix, Gaston was my thing, because it was a cartoon that made me burst out with laughter. I also draw funny cartoons, and so it's always been a model for me, ever since I started.
Gaston's next adventure? A movie, planned for release sometime next year.
And the Gaston exhibition is on at Paris's Pompidou Center until the 10th of April. Now, that's all we have time for. We're going to leave you with images from newcomer French fashion designer Coche. The setting, Paris's Folies Bergère Theatre, served as a fitting stage for this shiny, sparkly show. Paris Fashion Week continues until the 8th of March. Thanks for your company. More news coming up on France 24 after this.